The stars had always been a mystery, a silent audience to the rise and fall of civilizations. But on the night of October 23, 2147, they began to whisper back. Dr. Elara Voss stood on the observation deck of the Eclipse, humanity's most advanced deep space research vessel, her breath fogging the reinforced glass as she stared into the void. The ship orbited a dying star, its crimson light casting long shadows across the deck. The star, designated K-147, was on the brink of collapse, its final moments a spectacle of cosmic violence. But it wasn't the star that held Elara's attention, it was the signal. 3 days ago, the Eclipse had detected an anomaly, a pulse, of energy emanating from the star's core, unlike anything ever recorded. It wasn't random, it was patterned, deliberate, a message. Elara's fingers trembled as she adjusted the holographic display floating before her. The signal repeated every 47 seconds, a sequence of prime numbers followed by a series of coordinates. The numbers were a universal language, a beacon meant to be understood. But the coordinates, they pointed to a location deep within the star's collapsing core, a place no human vessel could survive. Dr. Voss, a voice crackled through her comms. It was Captain Jackson Reed, his tone as steady as ever, but with an edge Elara hadn't heard before. "We've got a problem." She turned away from the viewport, her boots clicking against the metal floor as she made her way to the bridge. The crew was tense, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors displaying the star's erratic energy readings. Reed stood at the center, his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the main screen. "What's going on?" Elara asked, though she already knew the answer. The air was thick with unease. Reed gestured to the screen. "The star's core is destabilizing faster than we predicted. We've got maybe 6 hours before it goes supernova, but that's not the worst part." He paused, his jaw tightening. "The signal. It's changed." Elara's heart skipped. A beat. "Changed how?" Reed tapped a command into the console and the screen shifted to display the new signal. The prime numbers were gone, replaced by a single, repeating phrase, "We are here." The words sent a chill down Elara's spine. She had spent her life searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, but now that it was here, staring her in the face, she felt a primal fear she couldn't shake. This wasn't just a message, it was a warning. Before she could respond, the ship's alarms blared and the lights flickered. The Eclipse shuddered violently, throwing Elara against the console. Red emergency lights bathed the bridge as the EU crew scrambled to stabilize the ship. "Report!" Reed barked. "Gravitational surge from the star," one of the crew members shouted. "It's pulling us in!" Elara's mind raced. The signal, the coordinates, the star's sudden instability. It was all connected. Something was in there, something ancient and powerful, and it was calling to them. "We have to go," she said, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "We have to reach those coordinates." Reed stared at her, his expression a mix of disbelief and determination. "You're talking about a suicide mission?" "Maybe," Elara replied, her eyes locking with his. "But if we don't, we'll never know what's waiting for us. And I think it's been waiting for a long time." The Eclipse groaned as the star's gravity clawed at its hull, the sound of metal straining against an unimaginable force. Elara knew they were running out of time. Whatever was in the star's core, it was their only chance, and their greatest threat. As the crew prepared for the impossible, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover a secret that would change humanity forever. The stars had begun to whisper, and their message was clear. We are not alone. The Eclipse groaned again, a deep, metallic shudder that reverberated through the ship like the death rattle of some colossal beast. Elara gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white as the gravitational pull of the dying star intensified. The crew scrambled to stabilize the ship, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of urgency. "Engines at 120% capacity," shouted Lieutenant Mara Chen, her fingers flying across the controls. "We can't break free. It's too strong." "Captain." Reed's jaw tightened as he barked orders. "Divert all non-essential power to the thrusters. We need to buy time." Elara's mind raced. The signal, the coordinates, the star's sudden instability, it was all connected. But how? And why now? She glanced at the holographic display, where the words, "We are here," pulsed ominously. The message wasn't just a greeting, it was a summons. And whatever was calling them wasn't content to wait. "Captain," Elara said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "we're not going to escape this. The star's gravity is too strong. But if we follow the coordinates, if we go into the star, we might survive." Reed stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief. "Into the star? Are you out of your mind? The heat alone would vaporize us before we got close." "Not if we use the Eclipse's experimental quantum shielding," Elara countered. "We've never tested it under these conditions, but it's our only shot. The signal is coming from inside the star. There's something there, something that wants us to find it." Reed hesitated, his eyes darting between Elara and the main screen, where the star's fiery surface churned like a living thing. The crew fell silent, waiting for his decision. Finally, he nodded. "Do it. But if this goes south, Voss, I'm holding you personally responsible." Elara didn't have time to respond. She rushed to the engineering station where Chief Engineer Ravi Singh was already working furiously to reroute power to the quantum shielding. "We've got one shot at this," she said, her voice low. "If the shielding fails even for a second." "I know," Ravi replied, his hands moving with practiced precision. "But if it works, we'll be the first humans to survive a dive into a star, assuming there's anything left on the other side." The Eclipse shuddered again, as the star's gravity tightened its grip. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, and the temperature on the bridge began to rise. Elara felt a bead of sweat trickle down her temple as she watched the quantum shielding activate, a shimmering blue aura enveloping the ship. "Shielding at 100%, Ravi announced. "But it won't last long. We've got maybe 10 minutes before it overloads." "Then we'd better move," Reed said, his voice grim. "Helm, set a course for the coordinates. Full speed ahead." The ship lurched as it changed course, plunging toward the star's fiery surface. The view on the main screen shifted from the cold void of space to a swirling maelstrom of plasma and fire. The temperature on the bridge continued to climb, and the air grew thick with tension. Elara gripped the console, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The signal was growing stronger, the words, "We are here," flashing faster and faster. She could feel it now, a presence, vast and ancient, waiting for them. It wasn't just a message, it was a consciousness, reaching out across the void. Entering. "The star's corona," the helmsman announced, his voice trembling. "Shielding holding. For now." The Eclipse plunged deeper, the fiery plasma swirling around the ship like a living thing. The shielding flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, Elara thought it would fail. But it held, barely, as the ship descended into the star's core, and then, suddenly, the fire was gone. The Eclipse emerged into a vast, cavernous space, impossibly suspended within the star's core. The walls glowed with a soft, golden light, and the air was cool and still. The crew stared in stunned silence, their breaths held, as the ship drifted forward. "What is this?" Reed whispered, his voice barely audible. Elara stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's a construct," she said. "A structure built inside the star, but not by us, by them." The holographic display flickered, and the words, "We are here," dissolved into a new message. "Welcome, travelers. You have found us." The ship's lights dimmed, and a low hum filled the air. Elara felt a presence in her mind, vast and incomprehensible, like the weight of an entire galaxy pressing down on her. And then, a voice, not in her ears, but in her thoughts. We have waited eons for your arrival. You are the first to prove yourselves worthy. But know this. What you find here will change everything. Are you prepared to see the truth? Elara glanced at Reed, who nodded grimly. She took a deep breath and replied, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. We're ready. The walls of the cavern began to shift, the golden light coalescing into shapes and patterns, and then, with a blinding flash, the truth was revealed. The Eclipse was no longer alone. Surrounding it were countless other ships, each one different, each one from a civilization long lost to time. And at the center of it all was a massive pulsating orb, a gateway, or perhaps a prison. Elara's heart pounded as the voice spoke again. This is the Nexus, the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Step forward and you will see what lies beyond. But beware, not all truths are meant to be known. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but Elara knew there was no turning back. They had come too far, seen too much. Whatever lay beyond the Nexus, it was their destiny to face it. As the Eclipse moved toward the orb, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover a secret that would change humanity forever. The stars had whispered, and now they roared, and the journey was only beginning. The Eclipse drifted closer to the pulsating orb, its surface rippling like liquid light. The crew stood in stunned silence, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow. Elara felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her, a mix of awe and dread. This was no mere discovery. It was a threshold, a door to something far beyond human comprehension. The voice in her mind returned, softer now, almost gentle. You are not the first to come this far, but you may be the last. Elara's breath caught. What do you mean? Who are you? The orb pulsed, and the golden light around them shifted, forming images in the air, scenes of civilizations rising and falling, stars being born and dying, galaxies colliding and merging. It was a history, but not one she recognized. These were not human stories. These were the stories of countless other species, some so alien they defied description. We are the keepers, the voice replied. We preserve the memory of those who came before. And we guard the Nexus, the bridge between realities. Reed stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm, though it was clear no weapon could protect them here. Bridge between realities. What are you talking about? The orb's light intensified, and the air around them seemed to vibrate with energy. Elara felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. The images around them shifted again, showing a vast, interconnected web of light. A multiverse, each thread a different reality, each one shimmering with its own unique energy. The Nexus is a gateway, the voice explained. A way to traverse the multiverse. But it is also a prison. For within it lies the Harbinger, a being of infinite hunger, sealed away eons ago by those who came before you. It seeks to consume all realities, to reduce existence to nothingness. Elara's stomach churned. And you're telling us this? Why? What do you expect us to do? The orb's light dimmed slightly, and the voice grew somber. The seal is weakening. The Harbinger stirs. If it escapes, all realities will fall. You must decide. Will you help us repair the seal, or will you turn away and let the multiverse burn? The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Reed's face was pale, his usual stoicism shattered. This is too much. We're not equipped for this. We're just explorers, not guardians of the multiverse. Elara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. We don't have a choice. If what they're saying is true, we can't just walk away. We have to try. The orb pulsed again, and a new image formed, a massive, intricate structure, like a labyrinth of light and shadow. At its center was a dark, writhing mass, tendrils of void reaching out, straining against the golden threads that bound it. "This is the seal," the voice said. "To repair it, you must enter the labyrinth and reach its core. But be warned, the Harbinger will test you. It will prey on your fears, your doubts, your deepest regrets. Few who enter emerge unchanged." Elara swallowed hard. "And if we fail?" The voice was silent for a moment, as if considering its words. Then, softly, "If you fail, the Harbinger will be free. And all that is, all that was, and all that ever could be, will cease to exist." The bridge fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging heavy in the air. Elara turned to Reed, her eyes pleading. "We have to do this. We don't have a choice." Reed hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But if we're doing this, we're doing it together. No one gets left behind." The orb's light flared, and a portal opened before them, a swirling vortex of gold and black. Elara took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She glanced at the crew, their faces a mix of fear and determination, and stepped forward. "Let's go." As they crossed the threshold, the Eclipse vanished behind them, and the labyrinth stretched out before them, an endless maze of light and shadow, filled with whispers and echoes of things long forgotten. Elara felt the presence of the Harbinger, a cold, malevolent force pressing against her mind. It was watching them, waiting. The voice in her mind spoke one last time, faint and distant. "Remember, the labyrinth is not just a test of strength, but of will. To face the Harbinger, you must first face yourselves." And with that, the light faded, leaving them alone in the labyrinth. The journey had only just begun, but Elara knew one thing for certain. They would never be the same again. The labyrinth was alive. Its walls shifted and pulsed like the veins of some colossal breathing organism. The air was thick with a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through Elara's bones. Every step they took echoed unnaturally, as if the maze itself was mocking their presence. The crew moved cautiously, their weapons drawn, though none of them truly believed they could fight whatever lay ahead. Elara led the way, her eyes scanning the ever-changing walls. The golden light that had guided them earlier was gone, replaced by a dim, flickering glow that cast long, twisting shadows. The labyrinth seemed to stretch infinitely in every direction, its pathways branching and folding in on themselves in ways that defied logic. "This place, it doesn't make sense," muttered Lieutenant Chen, her voice trembling. "I just looked behind us, and the path we came from, it's gone. It's like the maze is rewriting itself as we move." "Elara," nodded, her jaw tight. "It's testing us. The Keepers said the Harbinger would prey on our fears. This is just the beginning." As if in response to her words, the walls around them shimmered, and the air grew colder. A faint whisper reached Elara's ears, a voice she hadn't heard in years, her mother's voice, soft and pleading. "Elara, why did you leave me?" She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The others stopped too, their faces pale. Each of them was hearing something different, something personal. Reed's hands clenched into fists, his eyes darting around as if searching for an unseen enemy. "It's not real," Elara said, forcing herself to keep moving. "It's trying to get inside our heads. Don't listen to it." But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The walls of the labyrinth seemed to close in, the shadows twisting into familiar shapes, faces of loved ones long gone, regrets they had buried, mistakes they could never undo. The air grew heavier, suffocating, as if the maze itself was feeding on their despair. "We can't do this," Chen said, her voice breaking. "It's too much. I can't." "You can," Elara snapped, turning to face her. "We all can. This is what the Harbinger does. It makes you doubt yourself, makes you believe you're not strong enough. But we are. We have to be. Reed stepped forward, his face grim. She's right. We've faced impossible odds before. This is no different. But even as he spoke, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The walls of the labyrinth shifted violently, and the whispers turned into screams. The shadows surged forward, coalescing into a towering, amorphous figure, a being of pure darkness, its form constantly shifting, its eyes burning like twin suns, the Harbinger. Elara's heart pounded as the creature loomed over them, its presence overwhelming. She felt its voice in her mind, cold and merciless. You are nothing. Your struggles are meaningless. Your existence is a fleeting spark in the void. Why fight when you will inevitably fade? The crew staggered under the weight of its words, the resolve crumbling. Elara felt the despair creeping in, threatening to consume her. But then she remembered the Keeper's warning. To face the Harbinger, they had to face themselves. She closed her eyes, blocking out the creature's voice, and focused on the one thing that had always driven her, the unshakable belief that there was more to existence than chaos and despair, that even in the face of the unknown, there was hope. You're wrong, she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. We're not nothing. We're explorers. We're survivors. And we're not afraid of you. The Harbinger's form wavered, its burning eyes narrowing. Brave words. But words are meaningless. Prove your worth. The labyrinth shifted again, and the ground beneath them gave way, plunging them into darkness. Elara felt herself falling, the air rushing past her, the screams of the crew echoing in her ears. And then, suddenly, she was standing alone in a vast, empty void. Before her stood a mirror image of herself, but it was wrong. Its eyes were hollow, its expression twisted with bitterness and regret. It was the version of herself she had always feared becoming, broken, defeated, alone. This is who you are, the reflection said, its voice dripping with venom. This is who you've always been, a failure, a coward. You left your mother to die. You let your crew down. You'll never be enough. Elara's hands trembled, but she didn't look away. Maybe, she said quietly. Maybe I've made mistakes. Maybe I've failed. But that doesn't define me. I'm still here. I'm still fighting, the reflection sneered. Fighting for what? A universe that doesn't care. A future that doesn't exist. For the chance to make things right, Elara said, her voice growing stronger. For the people who believe in me. For the hope that there's something more. The reflection hesitated, its form flickering, and then, with a sound like shattering glass, it dissolved into nothingness. The void around her faded, and Elara found herself back in the labyrinth, the crew standing beside her, their faces filled with newfound determination. The Harbinger loomed above them, its form less solid now, its burning eyes dimmed. We're not afraid of you, Reed said, his voice firm. And we're not giving up. The Harbinger let out a deafening roar, its form collapsing in on itself as the labyrinth began to dissolve. The golden light of the Nexus returned, bathing them in its warm glow. The voice of the Keepers echoed in their minds once more. You have proven yourselves worthy. The seal is restored. The Harbinger is contained. For now. Elara felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. The Keeper's voice grew solemn. But know this, the Harbinger is not defeated. It will rise again, and when it does, you must be ready. The light around them intensified, and the labyrinth vanished, replaced by the familiar interior of the Eclipse. The crew stood in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process what had just happened. Elara took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Reed's. We did it, she said softly. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot. Reed nodded, his expression grim. Then we'll be ready. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. As the eclipse drifted away from the dying star, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The stars had whispered, and now they roared. And somewhere, in the depths of the multiverse, the Harbinger waited. The end was only the beginning. The eclipse emerged from the star's corona, its hull scorched, but intact, the quantum shielding flickering weakly as it struggled to hold. The crew stood on the bridge, silent and shell-shocked, their minds still reeling from the labyrinth and the confrontation with the Harbinger. The star behind them collapsed into a brilliant supernova, its light bathing the ship in a final blinding flash before fading into the void. Elara stared at the view screen, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the console. The weight of what they had just experienced pressed down on her like a physical force. They had faced the Harbinger, stared into the abyss of their own fears, and come out alive. But the Keeper's warning echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder that their victory was temporary. The Harbinger is not defeated. It will rise again. Reed broke the silence, his voice low and steady. We need to debrief, now. Everyone to the conference room. The crew moved slowly, their movements heavy with exhaustion. Elara followed, her mind racing. The labyrinth, the Harbinger, the Nexus. It was all too much to process. But one thing was clear. They had stumbled onto something far bigger than themselves, something that would change the course of human history. In the conference room, the crew gathered around the table, their faces pale and drawn. Reed stood at the head of the table, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. All right, he said. Let's start from the beginning. What the hell just happened? Elara took a deep breath and began to explain. She told them about the signal, the coordinates, the labyrinth, and the Harbinger. She described the Keepers and their warning, the multiverse, and the fragile seal that held the Harbinger at bay. The crew listened in stunned silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. When she finished, Reed leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly on the table. So, let me get this straight. We just stumbled onto a cosmic prison for some kind of multiverse-devouring entity, and now we're supposed to be its jailers? Not just us, Elara said. The Keepers said others would come. We're not alone in this. Great, muttered Chen. So we're part of some intergalactic neighborhood watch. What happens when the Harbinger breaks free again? Are we supposed to just fight it? I don't know, Elara admitted. But we have to be ready. The Keepers said the seal is restored for now, but it won't last forever. We need to learn everything we can about the Harbinger, the Nexus, and the multiverse. If we're going to stop it, we need to understand it. Reed nodded slowly. All right. First things first. We need to report this to command. But something tells me they're not going to believe us without proof. We have the data from the star, Ravi said. The signal, the energy readings, the quantum shielding logs. It's not much, but it's a start. And we have our memories, Elara added. Our experiences. They can't deny what we've been through. Reed sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right. We'll compile everything and send it to command. But until we hear back, we keep this to ourselves. No leaks, no rumors. Understood? The crew nodded, their expressions grim. They knew the stakes. If word got out about the Harbinger, it could spark panic across the galaxy. Humanity wasn't ready to face the truth about the multiverse. Not yet. As the meeting adjourned, Elara lingered behind, her mind still racing. Reed approached her, his voice low. You okay? She shook her head. I don't know. It's a lot. I just keep thinking about what the Harbinger showed me. My reflection, my regrets. It felt so real. It was real, Reed said. But it wasn't the whole truth. You're more than your mistakes, Elara. We all are. Looked at him, her eyes searching his. Do you think we can do this? Stop the Harbinger, I mean. Reed hesitated, then nodded. I don't know if we can, but I know we have to try, and if anyone can figure this out, it's you. Elara managed a small smile. Thanks. I just hope we're ready for what comes. Next. As she left the conference room, her thoughts turned to the future. The Harbinger was contained, but for how long? And when it rose again, would they be strong enough to face it? The answers were out there, hidden in the stars, waiting to be discovered. But one thing was certain. The journey was far from over. The stars had whispered, and now they roared. And Elara knew, deep in her heart, that the real battle was just beginning. The Eclipse drifted through the void, its engines humming softly as the crew worked to repair the damage from their encounter with the dying star. Elara sat alone in the observation deck, staring out at the endless expanse of space. The supernova's light had faded, leaving only the cold, distant glow of stars. But the weight of what they had discovered lingered, pressing down on her like a shadow. She replayed the events in her mind, the labyrinth, the Harbinger, the Keeper's warning. It all felt like a dream, yet the data on her tablet confirmed it was real. The multiverse, the nexus, the fragile seal holding back an entity that could devour existence itself. It was almost too much to comprehend, but Elara knew they couldn't afford to hesitate. The Harbinger would return, and when it did, they had to be ready. She opened a secure channel to the ship's database and began compiling everything they had learned. If they were going to stop the Harbinger, they needed to understand it, and that meant diving deeper into the mysteries of the multiverse. As she worked, a soft chime sounded from the console. It was a message from command, marked urgent. Elara's heart skipped a beat as she opened it. The screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Klein, the head of Deep Space Command. Dr. Voss, Klein began, his voice clipped and formal. We've reviewed your preliminary report. Frankly, it's extraordinary. If what you're saying is true, this could be the most significant discovery in human history. But we need more than data. We need proof. Elara leaned forward, her expression serious. Admiral, I understand your skepticism, but I assure you, everything we've reported is true. The Harbinger is real, and it's a threat to all of existence. We need to act now. Klein's eyes narrowed. And what exactly do you propose we do? You're talking about an entity that exists outside our understanding of reality. How do we fight something like that? We start by learning, Elara said. The Nexus, the multiverse, the Keepers, they're all connected. If we can understand how the seal works, we might be able to strengthen it, or find a way to stop the Harbinger for good. Klein was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded. Very well. We're sending a team to your location to assist with the investigation. But be warned, Dr. Voss. If this turns out to be a wild goose chase, there will be consequences. Over the next few weeks, the Eclipse became a hub of activity. Scientists, engineers, and military personnel arrived in droves, each one eager to contribute to the mission. Elara worked tirelessly, coordinating the research efforts and piecing together the fragments of knowledge they had gathered. But as the days turned into weeks, strange things began to happen. Equipment malfunctioned for no apparent reason. Crew members reported hearing whispers in empty corridors. And then there were the dreams, vivid, unsettling visions of the labyrinth and the Harbinger, its burning eyes watching them from the shadows. Elara knew what it meant. The Harbinger was testing the seal, probing for weaknesses, and it was getting stronger. One night, as she lay in her quarters, Elara was jolted awake by a deafening roar. The ship shuddered violently, and the lights flickered. She scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding, and rushed to the bridge. The crew was already there, their faces pale with fear. On the view screen, the void outside the ship was rippling, as if reality itself was unraveling. And then, with a sound like shattering glass, A massive rift opened, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness. The Harbinger had returned. Elara's mind raced as the crew scrambled to stabilize the ship. "We need to close that rift," she shouted. "If it gets through, it's over." Reed grabbed her arm, his voice urgent. "How? We don't have the power to fight something like that." Elara's eyes darted to the console where the data from the Nexus was displayed. "The seal," she said. "We need to recreate it. If we can generate enough energy, we might be able to force the rift closed." "That's a big if," Reed said. "But it's the only shot we've got." The crew worked frantically, rerouting power and recalibrating the ship's systems. Elara focused on the data, her fingers flying across the console as she calculated the energy requirements. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. As the rift grew larger, the Harbinger's form began to emerge, a towering, shapeless mass of darkness, its burning eyes fixed on the Eclipse. The crew braced themselves as the ship's engines roared, to life, channeling every ounce of power into the seal. "Now!" Elara shouted. A blinding beam of light erupted from the ship, striking the rift with a force that shook the very fabric of reality. The Harbinger let out a deafening roar, its form writhing as the light engulfed it. For a moment, it seemed to hold. And then, with a final, ear-splitting crack, the rift collapsed, sealing the Harbinger away once more. The bridge fell silent, the crew staring at the view screen in stunned disbelief. The void outside was calm again, the stars shining brightly as if nothing had happened. Elara sank into her chair, her hands trembling. They had done it, for now. But she knew the Harbinger would return, and when it did, they would need to be stronger, smarter, and more prepared. Reed approached her, his expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We did it," he said. "But this isn't over, is it?" Elara shook her head. "No, it's just the beginning. But we've bought ourselves some time, and we'll use it to make sure we're ready." As the Eclipse drifted through the void, Elara felt a strange sense of hope. The stars had whispered, and now they roared. But humanity had proven it could stand against the darkness. And as long as they stood together, they would face whatever came next. The end, for now.